I have to get into your eccentric temperament right from the get-go. There is a moment in this documentary where your wife, Julie, confesses that you proposed to her, and she said yes, and then you disappeared for a week into the Philippines. And she tried to get in touch with you, and finally did get in touch with you, and asked, well, is the marriage still on? And you said, oh, yes, of course. Your justification was that, well, you didn't want to pay the expense of long-distance telephones. I told this story to my partner. I thought it was amusing, and she was absolutely horrified by this. And this leads me to ask if the notorious reputation you have for aggressive cost-cutting, perhaps one of the finest cost-cutters in the history of cinema, how much does this lead into your personal life, into your private life? I mean, surely when you're talking about sweethearts and fiancés, you can afford to spend at least $1 or something. Come on.
Well, that story is possibly true, but the fact of the matter is I've been in the jungle. At that time where there were no phones. So that was the real reason that I was able to call, right?
But this does raise an interesting question. I mean, under what circumstances will you, in fact, pay the regrettable cost of maintaining a relationship like this, whether it be professional or private?
Well, I would have to divide that into two answers.
Sure.
Privately, and particularly with my wife and children, I'm much more liberal in spending than I am on films. On films, I really watch every penny.
Yes. But are there any circumstances you've regretted either spending extra money or not spending the dollar or not spending the dime, so to speak? Or?
I don't think I regret any overspending. I think once or twice I should have let pictures go a little longer and spent a little bit more. These were pictures that were coming in on budget and on schedule. I might have added a couple of extra days to the shooting schedule, but I felt this is a 15-day schedule. This is the 13th day. I have to make a decision. We're going to shoot it in 15 days. In retrospect, had I gone to 16 or 17, the additional quality, for lack of a better word, might have been greater than the expenditure.
Well, what's the cost-benefits analysis for this quality to spending ratio that you've devised over the years? Is it largely instinctual? Is it largely looking aggressively at the books? What of this?
It's a combination of all of the above, plus just the calculation and the thing that I'm always looking for the greatest quality. I've done pictures, Little Shop of Horrors, in 2.5 days.
Yeah.
I did that with very little money, but I did the best possible job I could do with the amount of money. So I'm looking for the highest possible quality, but since I back my pictures with my own money, which is something you're never supposed to do, I have to be certain I shouldn't say certain, I have to have a reasonable guess that I'm going to come out of this one okay.
Do you think that such brutal, Spartan-like tendencies might be applied to, say, balancing the federal budget, or perhaps creating a more efficient Department of Defense? Do you have any ideas on this? Or?
Well, I believe, and it isn't just the federal government, I believe large corporations, or the Department of Defense, which of course is part of the federal budget, I think there's a certain inherent waste in any large organization, whether it's public or private. I think they all could be streamlined, or I put it this way, I think they all should be streamlined, but I question if it can be done because the bureaucracies are in place and it's very, very difficult to move them.
It's the difficult, I suppose, not just in motion pictures, but for everybody right now. I mean, do you have any thoughts on the present Occupy Wall Street movement that's been going on in this city while you've been here? Or?
Weirdly enough, I was at the Occupy Wall Street meeting or sit-in, whatever you want to call it.
You went to Zuccotti Park? Or?
Yeah, just about an hour ago.
Really?
Yeah, and I donated a little money, and they had a couple of pictures taken of me there, which they said they wanted to use in some way, and I told them I was totally in support of what they're doing.
I'm surprised you weren't down there with a movie camera getting some master shots for a later production based off of Zuccotti Park or something like this. There should be an Occupy Wall Street movie. Is there a possible narrative, some bucks in this? Or?
Well, it's a kind of thing I did before in the 1960s.
Sure.
With the various protest meetings and anti-Vietnam demonstrations. I was there with cameras, and we did use the footage.
Yeah.
This one at the moment isn't quite that big. If it grows, however, that will be a different thing.
Well, did you see it at Times Square on Saturday? It was actually 15,000 people, and it was pretty aggressive with the cops arresting people. 88 people that day, too.
We came in on Saturday.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I saw opposite ends of New York.
Yeah.
Came in, went straight to the opera, went straight from the opera to Comic-Con to sign autographs.
That's right.
So I figure if I went in New York from the opera to Comic-Con, I saw various aspects of New York.
Yeah. Well, this leads me to ask you about how you collect your ideas, or how you, I suppose, maintain your attentions as to what's going on in contemporary society. It seems to me that going down to Zuccotti Park, you're still very much interested in finding out what the present concerns are. I mean, how often do you do this now in your daily life, just to sort of keep tabs? I mean, how do you know, for example, that, say, Hell's Angels or LSD or Zuccotti Park might be a saleable idea?
These are just aspects of pop culture that come to the surface, and I've been involved in all the previous ones, or in most of them one way or another, and the Occupy Wall Street movement is new, and I went just to see what it was like, and it was strange. And there's a real similarity to the 1960s here, and I don't know if the young people of today know that what they're doing, the signs they had, the music they had playing, the discussions, it brought me right back to, say, 1968.
Do you see any differences by chance? Or?
I saw very little differences. I did notice this. The police were not antagonistic. They were standing there, but I didn't see any of them make any harmful moves, where in the 60s I did see police make harmful moves.
Yeah.
Maybe they've learned something over the years.